Okay, in this video, I'm going to show you how to do the initial sync between Intuit Field Service Management and QuickBooks Enterprise. Okay, so we're going to go first in Field Service Management. We're going to review and make sure a couple things are matching. So under our company here and our class settings, all right, if class tracking is turned on in Field Service Management, it's also got to be turned on in Enterprise. So up under Preferences and Accounting Preferences, and we have our class tracking there, so they both have to be turned on. If you are using multiple warehouses, make sure that that is turned on in your advanced inventory settings here, so we can go into that in another video. If your employees, if you're going to be tracking time for your employees, the time tracking has got to be turned on under each individual employee here. So click on My Employee Center and double click on the employee himself. And then under payroll and compensation information, you've got to have the use time card data or use time data to create paychecks. So that means that this person now can create time cards. Okay. The other thing that has to be matching is that if you have inventory in Field Service Management, you've got to have inventory turned on in QuickBooks. And sales tax, same thing. If sales tax is turned on in Field Service, you've got to have it turned on in QuickBooks. And let's go see where you have those turned on in here. It's under Financial, and then we have our basic invoice settings, and it says here, do you charge sales tax? Okay, so all those fields have to match. All right, so then we go to our company, and we have our integration here. And all this is under settings, of course. So it gives us a list of everything that syncs. It syncs our customers and items back and forth between the two, Field Service Management and QuickBooks Financial Desktop. It also exports from Field Service invoices, payments, texts, and time cards. Okay. So it's going to ask you, do you want to integrate with QuickBooks? You go ahead and say yes. Then it's going to ask you for the client authentication code. This is just needed during the first sync, okay? So you won't need this again, just during the first sync. So I usually do ABC123, okay? But you could do any type of files. You could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever your password is, but you'll just need to remember it once, okay? And then you're going to go ahead, we'll save this first. And then you're going to go ahead and install the integration client. Now, during the installation, QuickBooks does have to be closed, so you can't have QuickBooks open, and it does take a little bit to load, so give yourself some time there. So if you click on this and it blanks and your cursor blanks and it goes for a couple minutes, give it a couple minutes, okay, and it'll usually start. If you don't see it start after a little bit, check your downloads folder, check your security settings, all that fun stuff, but it usually starts on its own. Okay, so once you have that integration installed, you should have in your drop-down menu here a drop-down that says Intuit Field Service Management. Now, if it's not there, which it's not on ours, and I already have it installed, you've actually got to close out of your QuickBooks company. Okay, and then on your desktop, you have your QuickBooks icon, and you're going to right-click on it and go to Properties. Okay, under the Shortcut tab, you're going to click on Advanced Properties and run this as Administrator, and then Apply, and OK. And then you're going to right-click on the icon again and say Run as Administrator. Okay, so it opens up here, and we can put in our password. Now, if it still doesn't show up in our dropdown, there's one other thing that we'll have to do, which is go and cut it's called the QB shim if you do Control-Elite, okay, and you go to the Task Manager, and you have your Events shim. see if it's in here. It's not going to be in here yet, I guess. I'll show you in a little bit, but it'll have your something advanced shim in here, and you'll want to end that process in order for that drop down to show in your file menu. So the first thing it's going to do is you have to be logged in as admin, of course, in QuickBooks. You should be in single user mode. And it's going to prompt to you, Intuit Field Service Integration wants to connect to your file. Is this okay for it to connect to your file? So we're going to go ahead and say yes whenever the company file is open. You can say yes and log in as a certain user. So you can select a user called Field Service Management. That way you can track every time they make a change in your file. It'll show the user as Field Service Management. Now, if you want employee data to be synced over, or for Field Service Management, if you add a new technician and you want that technician to be added to QuickBooks, or if you're going to track sales reps, you do want to check this off here and make sure that the personal data is accessible. Okay. And then again, it's going to ask me for a second pop-up in just a second here once it starts the integration. And it's going to say that Corrigo, that was the field service part of it, but Corrigo, who powers field service, also wants access to the file. So we're going to say yes on both of these and say OK. Now once those are both done, notice under my file drop down I have the Intuit Field Service Integration now. That should be there. And I can synchronize my customers and jobs. I have settings also. Okay, and that's what we're about to go through right now is the settings. It does take a little bit to load on these things, so just be patient with it, give it time. It's not just click, click, click. We're talking about merging a database or connecting one database from the cloud into a database on your desktop, so it could take some time. So we have our basic settings here. So if updates have been made to an item in both Intuit Field Service and in QuickBooks during the sync, who wins? Usually QuickBooks is going to win, okay? Most important thing is keeping the integrity of your financial file. Okay, so you want to, usually QuickBooks is going to win. How often do you want it to prompt you to synchronize? 1 day, 2 days, 3 days after you've done the sync before? How often do you want to create backups? You might as well do it daily. When do you want to delete backups? Backups older than, I usually change this to 30 days of backups just in case. Okay, where are you going to store your backups? Here, and you can click over on the side and browse to where you want to actually store them. We also have our advanced settings over here, advanced settings tab, and it's going to pull this up. Again, notice that it takes a little bit to load, so you got to be patient. I'm definitely one of the least patient people when it comes to computers loading things, but with this, you just have to let it go, and it'll load eventually. Okay. So it says, do you want to turn on on-demand sync? Yes, it allows you to sync automatically behind the scenes. Do you want QuickBooks to be automatically updated when new jobs are created? Yes, I usually turn this on and say every 30 minutes have it update, okay? Because it can run a little slower during the updates if you don't have a very, very quick computer, okay? Also up here, we also have under the drop-down, I clicked on that little circle, and I have the advanced settings here, and this is it's called the client repository file. This is your log file. That's going to say every time you do a sync, this is where the sync log file is going to go. Okay, so you have to go through the first sync initially in order to create the log. And then in the future, you can override the location where it saves the log to a shared folder so that multiple people can have the sync on their computers and they share the same sync log. So it's not going to create any conflicts there of who's done the sync and not knowing this computer did a sync and that computer did a sync. It'll be a shared log. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and say next here. And make sure and read through these, of course. Don't just go based off of what I've said in this video. Make sure and read that this is settings for your company, okay? So the authentication code here, you want to put in the code that you entered into your field service management. Let me show you again what the code you put in right here. Actually, I think I changed it. Let me just make sure. Okay, so I'm going to save it. Okay, and then it's going to ask you what is your field service company name. That's the name that is here under your company name. Also, it would be up here under your business profile, okay? And it has to be the exact name, otherwise it won't find it. So let's try this. Next. Okay. So now it's reaching out to the internet and saying, all right, we've got the authentication code and we've got a company name. Do these two match to which field service file or which database file? Okay, so it matched. Now we have our customer settings. So our default customer type. What do you want your default customer type to be? Commercial should be mapped to which customer type. Residential should be mapped to which customer type. Okay, and that is based off of your customer types from online. Intuit Field Service customer name to company name in QuickBooks. So you want the customer's name to be the company name, or do you want the company name to be the company name? Okay, now over here, I didn't mention, you can add one additional by clicking that little add button, okay? And notice how it says create as a child for, it's cute, it's a sub for, okay? When you want, how do you want to sync? Do you want to sync the customer in all levels of jobs or just the customer level? And notice this is something that you can only set once. So 99% of my clients choose customer in all levels of jobs, but you can say customer in level 1, level 2. So if you've set up in the past that it's kind of a messy customer list and you only want to do customer in level 1, you can do that. Okay. So I'm going to say next. Now it's going to take me to the next screen, which is my item synchronization settings. Okay, the default when you add a service item to QuickBooks, the from Field Service. This means you've already added it in Field Service. Okay, now when it gets added into QuickBooks, what do you want the default account for service items to be? So you usually want to choose some sort of income account. Okay, is it defaulting to taxable or non-taxable? Now, of course, when these come into QuickBooks, they're going to tell you what comes into QuickBooks. And they're also going to, that way you can print out the list and go in and look at it and change the setup if you don't agree with the way that it was set up, okay? But this is just what it's going to default to. All right, when adding a non-inventory part, what should it default to? We're going to go down here again to income and choose materials, and it's taxable. Okay, you can add price list categories here. So if you have a generic price list, you can add that there. But it's going to say, QuickBooks service items are associated with service items. Non-inventory parts are associated with non-inventory parts, and inventory parts are inventory parts in QuickBooks. Okay. When adding sales tax items, what should the default agency be? So we're going to go down and say state board or state comptroller. And then next. Okay, so for invoices, do you want the invoices to always be marked to be printed or to be emailed when they sync down from Field Service? Do you want the work description in the invoice to be exported to QuickBooks? So what that means is on your work order here, let's look at a completed work order. The information here, description done. Do you want that description to flow through onto your invoice? Usually a good idea. Where do you want it? On the top line or on the bottom line? I usually say top. Do you want to populate the sales rep field? So I'm going to say yes. So the sales rep field will be populated with the primary tech from the work order online. Okay, and again, if you want to have that feature, you have to have in your preferences, when you set up the integration, allowing it to integrate into QuickBooks, you have to check mark that little box that says allow it to access Social Security numbers, etc. Okay, which invoice template do you want to use? Okay, on a subtotal, what subtotal item? You can only have one subtotal item in Field Service Management, not multiples. So what subtotal item do you want it to come in across as? And then you can also only have one discount item in Field Service. So anytime you apply a discount, it's going to send it to this item in QuickBooks. Okay, if you want to mark the invoices as pending, you can check that off there. That way, if they all come, anytime the invoices come across, they all get marked as pending and you can go in and review them before they get posted. Not very many of my clients do that, by the way. It sounds great, but it's a lot of work. Okay, and then if you have You don't have to do this. This is not required, okay? But if you have other charges, do you want it to be linked to, generic labor item? Which account do you want it to be linked to? Generic parts item and miscellaneous items. Where do you want it to be linked to? And then here, this is a big deal, okay? So do you want to, when an invoice comes across into QuickBooks from Field Service, do you want to use the work order number, which is the Intuit Field Service invoicing number, or do you want to use QuickBooks invoice number? If you do monthly recurring invoices for clients, okay, you probably want to use QuickBooks invoice numbering. So what it'll do is, you have all your invoices coming from Field Service Management. They're all coming down, and then you run your monthlies. And then the next time invoices come down, it's going to pick up the next invoice after the invoice number for your monthlies. So it'll automatically pick up the next invoice number it's supposed to. All right. It'll still put that work order number in the memo field. So this is something that most of my clients do. Again, use QuickBooks invoice numbering. We're going to go ahead and say next here. Do you want to import customer site information for time records? So are you going to import time? Yes. Okay, and then what's the default? You can only choose one payroll item per, so hourly. What's the default rate? $10 an hour. Overtime, choose your overtime rate, okay? And overtime is time and a half, so 15, and double time is $20 an hour. Now you can set up your time rates as far as overtime and double time in Field Service, so check out that video on how to set up our preferences in Field Service Management. So I'm going to go ahead and say finish here. Okay, so once we finish, it's going to ask us, are you ready to sync with Field Service Management? So I'm going to go ahead and say yes. All right, so it's going to pop up the tool here. Now, if I had any problems, remember I mentioned in the beginning that you have to have sales tax turned on. That's got to match. You've got to have, inventory turned on. You have to have class tracking turned on. It would give us a warning there if we didn't have any of those turned on. Okay, so it would give me a little warning box down here if I didn't have any of those turned on. So it automatically went to next because there were no changes. But now, because this is the first sync, there's going to be some changes. So it's going to halt here, and I've got to approve everything. So I'm going to say next. Okay, so it's going to match up. Non is non, tax is tax, tax is tax. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and match all those up, and it's going to sync, make sure that they all match. Now it goes to the sales tax items. So it's telling me it's received 3 updated sales tax items from Field Service and 10 from QuickBooks. So I get to go in here and see. So these are the ones you can see synchronized from QuickBooks. Okay. This is from Field Service is going to be added to QuickBooks because they're set up in Field Service. And these are in QuickBooks that are going to be added to Intuit Field Services. Now you can always click on any of these and say don't sync it right now. So let's say that this East Bayshore County /county is an old sales tax item we don't want to use anymore. So we can say do not synchronize this, and then you go in and you make it inactive, and then it won't try and synchronize again. Okay, so I'm going to say no on that one and no on that one. Then we click next. Okay, so it's going to tell us everything that's been happening in the sync, everything that's being synchronized. The nice part about this is it does give you an error log, so if there are any errors, it'll allow us to print it up. Okay. Next, it's going to go through to change sales tax groups. Same thing, gives us the option to stop it if we want to. We're going to go ahead and say next. Okay, now it's doing change customers. Be sure and watch our video on how to mass clean up your customer list because it's a big deal. If your customers aren't set up the right way, you're going to have a lot of errors here and you're going to have to go change it anyway. So I didn't change it yet because I wanted to show you the error log here. So we're going to go ahead and say next here. So it tells me what's coming from QuickBooks and going up and what's coming from Field Service and going down. QuickBooks up, okay? Then you can stop it at any time, of course. All right, so we're going to go ahead and say next. So it's going to start doing this synchronization, and it'll take a little bit to run through this. So I'm going to go ahead and pause while it runs through this part so I can show you the error log afterwards. Okay, so now it's gone through and it gives us our errors or our warning list. So you can go ahead and actually print this to a PDF. Okay, so when it opens up there, you can print it out and then that'll let you go in and review. So if I open up this document here, this PDF, it'll let you go in and review which dependencies there are. Okay, so all these customers have a sales tax item called East Bayshore set up as their natural sales tax item. And since we didn't sync over that East Bayshore sales tax item, it gives us all these warnings. So we can go in and edit those customers and change that. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say next though, and we'll fix those later so we can continue with the sync. So it's going to give us all our updated items. Okay, so it's going to receive 23 updated items from Field Service, 54 from QuickBooks, and it's going to prepare for the sync here. And once it's ready, we're going to look at the next and see which items are coming from Field Service and which are coming from QuickBooks. Okay, so it has all these test items going in, all these items coming from Field Service back into QuickBooks. Okay, so most of the time when you're setting this up, you won't have things coming from Field Service, but I'm going to go ahead and say next. Notice we can also say skip here to skip over those items if we want to, if we need to go in and review things again. So it's going to go ahead and go through the sync, and we're going to pause it again here so you don't have to watch all that sync happening. Okay, so the sync's finishing up. I don't expect there to be many problems with syncing the items. Normally there's a lot of problems with syncing the customers. And if it is your first time syncing, if you have thousands of customers, I have had to sit with the sync for 48 hours. It can take a long time. You're merging two databases. You know, you're creating a database online. So if your internet speed is slow, if your computer's slow especially, it can take a long time to do this initial sync. Okay, but there are no problems with the items. Everything did a sync okay, so we're going to say next. It's going to do item groups now, so if there's any item groups that need to be added. Okay. It's going to sync through the different item groups. Notice it gives us a failed item group. And so we can look in here and see that there are a couple group items or information in this group that doesn't sync into Field Service. So subtotal item is in this group A, and a subtotal item can't sync into Field Service Management. And then in this one, it's telling us that a flat price group can't be added because this one price item isn't added yet. So we can print those out again as we just as we did the customers to go back and fix them. The classes get added and changed, so it's going to synchronize the different classes back and forth. Now again, if you don't want anything to sync, you have to actually go into QuickBooks and make it inactive. And once you make it inactive, even if it's in the Field Service database, it'll take it out. Now it has employees with approved invoices, so any invoices that are in Field Service and need to sync down will be added here. Okay, it's going to tell us, you know, Marjorie Jane in Field Service, which employee is that in QuickBooks. Okay, so if I don't have these people set up in QuickBooks, I can say skip and go set them up. Also, if I don't have the sales rep set up appropriately, I can say skip and go create those later. So I'm going to go ahead and skip these for now. So it allows you to tie the technician to the different sales rep and the employees. Okay, so we have some invoices that need to be brought over. It gives us some information on the invoices here. We're going to go ahead and sync them across. If there's any errors on this, which I expect there to be, it'll give us our errors and tell us why. Okay, these are probably because of items that couldn't sync over as well. And we're going to say next and change of payment methods. So your payment methods sync. You want to match these up so all the payment methods tie out. Okay. Approved time cards that need to come down. Okay. This employee has some approved time. I'm just going to sync it in as that employee for now. And it'll come across successfully. So that time card will come across. Okay. So it's telling me that there's some time that is going to be entered in, and it's giving me a warning that I have to fix something. I'm going to go ahead and say don't sync it for now. say next. Let's see what it's going to give me here. Do not synchronize. Oh, it's asking me to specify the payroll items. That's why. So I'm going to go ahead and specify the payroll items here. Oops. Okay. Now it'll let me go ahead. And that payroll data will come over, and then we can go ahead and say finish. So now you're done your sync, you're connected to your field service management. Anytime you want to go in there and do the sync again, you can come in here and start the sync.